Hey everybody, RHINO here, the world's strongest pro bodybuilder and inventor of the cooler. The world's only cooler, holds a gallon of ice water and keeps your pre and post workout drinks all together inside one ice cold container. Be sure to check out Efferding.com for the new flex hats and t-shirts. Today's shirt is just like my content, nothing fancy, just raw. A lot of people have been asking me where I'm driving during these rants, so I asked Kevin Hart to help me out with the answer.
Mind your damn motherfucking business, bitch!
I hope that helps. So, today I want to talk about 5 medications that make you weak. The first medication on my list that'll make you weak is antibiotics. Antibiotics are overused and overprescribed. The problem with antibiotics is that they not only kill the bad bacteria, but they also kill the good bacteria, and this includes the bacteria of the gut that aids in the digestion of foods. This can cause bloating and diarrhea, so you're losing valuable water and electrolytes in addition to calories. Anything that interferes with your ability to eat or digest food will cause a loss of performance, whether through a reduction in absorption of nutrients or a loss of appetite. If you absolutely have to take antibiotics to address a medical issue, then you should take a probiotic and eat fermented foods and eat yogurt to help build the good digestive bacteria, and use bone broth to help repair the epithelial lining of the gut. I've worked with professional MMA fighters who have been forced to take antibiotics due to skin conditions contracted during training, and they've lost weight and strength due to their inability to absorb all the nutrients from their diet and from water loss. Now, this is especially important for teens who have been prescribed antibiotics to control acne. Long-term use of antibiotics is a terrible idea for young athletes. Antibiotics only work on bacterial infections, not viruses such as the common cold or flu. So don't be too quick to pop that Z-Pack the next time you're not feeling well. The second medication that'll make you weak are anti-inflammatories, such as ibuprofen. The problems here are twofold. 1, they cause digestive problems. They weaken the lining of the stomach, making it susceptible to inflammation from the stomach acids, causing ulcers, bleeding, or perforation of the lining, which compromises digestion and absorption of nutrients, which results in a loss of weight and strength. Now, second, they impede workout recovery. The acute inflammatory response resulting from hard training is beneficial, and it shouldn't be impeded with ice or anti-inflammatories. The inflammation is part of the healing process that signals the body to release beneficial hormones and to bring blood to the area. If you've listened to my rant on active recovery, you'll know that blood is the life force for repair and growth. So anything you do to impede blood flow to the muscles or joints will compromise performance. The third medication or drug that'll make you weak always raises eyebrows, but I've seen it 1,000 times over the years, and that's the loss of strength due to taking anti-estrogens. I can't tell you how many times athletes have reached out to me over the years complaining about strength loss and joint pain, only to find out they're taking anti-estrogens. Now, this includes professional strongmen and powerlifters, not just pre-contest bodybuilders. Most of them were taking anti-estrogens just because they heard that's what you're supposed to do when taking testosterone, not because they had a blood test showing elevated estrogen or were experiencing any symptoms such as gynecomastia. Unfortunately, everyone responds differently to testosterone use, so it's unpredictable whether estrogen conversion will present a problem. Some testosterone users get elevated estrogen levels and gynecomastia symptoms using just 200 milligrams a week, while others experience none of these problems using 1 gram a week. There are also many other factors to influence the potential benefits and side effects of performance-enhancing drugs, such as sex hormone binding globulin, which is SHBG, and its effect on free testosterone. If SHBG is high, then testosterone will be bound and rendered useless by the body. If prolactin levels are elevated, which often happens from using DECA or trenbolone, this can cause erectile dysfunction, or the dreaded DECA-dick. Not to get off track, but these elevated prolactin levels can wreak havoc on an athlete, but can be controlled through the use of the prescription medication cabergoline. As you can see, there are many factors involved and everyone responds differently. So a blood test is the only way to definitively know what's going on. In my RHINO's rant number 2, I covered this in great detail and I explained how and where you can get blood tests. Now, I understand bodybuilders and physique competitors want to keep estrogen low so they can get lean for a show, even though I believe the practice is highly overrated, abused, and most often unnecessary. But most athletes don't bother to get blood tests, so they just shotgun all these drugs because their coach or the internet said so. But for strength athletes, using estrogen blockers can absolutely cause a loss of strength, particularly these very powerful third generation AIs such as anastrozole, letrozole, and exemestane. The important thing to understand is that there are many hormones that are affected by the use of performance enhancing drugs, and estrogen is not the enemy. Here again is where I draw on my personal experience. I believe estrogen is helpful for strength athletes. I believe the ratio of testosterone to estrogen is more important than looking at estrogen by itself and where it falls in the accepted range. I haven't found a lot of research on this topic. Maybe somebody else wants to pick that ball up and run with it. My experience is twofold. First, when I've used anti-estrogens, I've lost strength, and I've seen this over and over again with athletes I've trained or consulted. And second, I performed my best lifts when my estrogen levels were the highest. You may dismiss this as simply due to the fact that my testosterone levels were also at their highest. But when I've taken anti-estrogens with high-dose testosterone and my estrogen levels were normal, my strength also went down. Again, this is strictly from personal experience, but my experience includes very detailed blood panels and urinalysis done on a monthly basis for nearly 10 years, where I've been able to see over 100 different markers, 60 days out, 30 days out, and the day after the competition, along with all of my off-season testing. From this experience, I never recommend anti-estrogens for strength athletes. If blood tests reveal high estrogen and high SHBG binding the testosterone, then I'd much prefer to reduce the testosterone intake and introduce androgens such as masteron that are unlikely to aromatize and will bring down the SHBG and free up more testosterone for the body to use. I've always felt that taking testosterone and anti-estrogens together was a bit like pressing the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. Remember, it's not how much you take, it's what your body can use. For those highly susceptible to gyno, just be aware of the cost benefit when using anti-estrogens. Ultimately, if you intend to continue using testosterone, you may have to resort to surgery to remove the tissue. The fourth medication on my list that will cost you strength is metformin. Metformin is a drug that's prescribed for type 2 diabetics, and oftentimes for those whose hemoglobin A1C is in a pre-diabetic range. Scientists were long uncertain about the exact mechanism by which metformin reduced blood sugars, but the most recent conclusions is that it impedes glucose absorption in the intestines. This is why I believe metformin causes athletes to lose strength. It's very common for athletes who drastically reduce carbohydrates to lose strength, unless you're John Anderson, but he's not human, so I'm not counting him. If you're a strength athlete that struggles with hemoglobin A1C levels in the pre-diabetic range, there's a good chance you're carrying too much body fat and not getting enough cardiovascular exercise. This is one of the reasons why I implemented 20 rep sets, weighted carries, and dip chin up supersets, so that I could maintain strength while minimizing body fat and improve my cardiovascular conditioning at the same time. If metformin was the most effective way to reduce blood sugars, I would be hesitant to include it on my list. But research shows that cinnamon is just as effective as metformin, and exercise is twice as effective as metformin for reducing hemoglobin A1C. As with estrogen, there isn't a large body of research to support my conclusion. But from my personal experience with metformin and from the experience of those athletes with whom I've worked over the years, this is one to avoid. Well, I've saved the worst for last, and unfortunately, it's a very commonly used medication that many people have been led to believe will improve their health, but the research says quite the opposite. This class of drugs are statins, such as Lipitor, Crestor, and others. Statins are known to cause muscle weakness and many other dangerous side effects. The worst thing about statins is the fact that unless you've already experienced a cardiac event, long-term studies show that statins have no effect on reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease. Statins are yet another extension of the bogus war on cholesterol that brought us poisons such as trans fats and highly processed vegetable oils like canola oil. Genetics appears to be the primary driver of cholesterol levels, but cholesterol will also rise and fall with body fat levels and blood sugar levels. So controlling these is a far better solution to overall health than taking statins. There have been many times in my career where blood tests have shown my cholesterol levels outside of the normal range. Typically, this is when I was at my heaviest body weight, eating the most calories and doing the least amount of cardio, such as during a powerlifting prep. Cholesterol levels are also negatively affected by performance-enhancing drugs, and some are worse than others at raising cholesterol levels such as tren. However, this does not always have to be cause for immediate alarm. If the weight gain is temporary, and if you include additional blood tests that are better indicators of a future cardiac event than the standard cholesterol screening. Each time my cholesterol levels became elevated during powerlifting prep, I added a VAP test to my blood work, and I always include a C-reactive protein test. The VAP test looks at the size of the cholesterol particulates, and mine were always predominantly large, which is good. It's the small particulates that are blamed for damaging the arteries and allowing for calcium deposits to form. The C-reactive protein test identifies chronic inflammation, and mine was also always very low. So I've never displayed any of the more common indicators associated with cardiovascular disease. Of course, if you've listened to my rants, you know I'm a bit of a hypochondriac. So I even went one step further, and I ordered up a coronary calcium scan, which identifies calcium deposits or plaque in the arteries. And I didn't have any calcium buildup either. I'm not trying to suggest that there aren't potentially serious side effects associated with the use of performance-enhancing drugs. But I want athletes that make these choices to make the effort to minimize their health impact and to avoid adding insult to injury by attempting to manage every symptom with another drug that may be both unnecessary and counterproductive. I've attached an article about statins that I suggest you read, as well as a link to a summary of an excellent ebook written by Chris Kresser called The Diet Heart Myth, which I purchased and highly recommend you to read. Of course, there are many other medications that can hinder athletic performance, so you should always do your research. But these are the ones I most commonly see affecting strength athletes I've worked with over the years. Well, that's my rant, and as always, thanks for listening.